In the fog-choked 100-acre wood, a sinister force twists Pooh's friends into monsters, luring Winnie the Pooh, Hercule Poirot, and Miss Marple with cryptic letters into a deadly game. As honey turns to poison and shadows hunger for their souls, the trio's heart, mind, and wisdom battle a malevolent wood that feeds on surrender. Can they unravel its chilling secret before it consumes them all? Chapter 1. An Unexpected Invitation. The fog clung to the 100-acre wood like a shroud, its tendrils curling around the gnarled trees, muffling the usual chatter of birds and the rustle of leaves. The air was heavy, damp, and unnaturally still, as though the forest itself held its breath, waiting for something or someone to disturb its uneasy slumber. Winnie the Pooh, his honey-colored fur dampened by the mist, shuffled along a narrow path, his paws sinking slightly into the muddy earth. His round face, usually bright with simple contentment, was creased with a faint unease. The wood had changed in recent days, though Pooh, in his thoughtful but muddled way, couldn't quite put his paw on why. The air tasted wrong, bitter, like the dregs of a honeypot left too long in the shadows. Perhaps, Pooh said aloud, his voice small in the oppressive silence. It's just that I haven't had enough honey today. That makes everything feel rumbly. He patted his tummy, but the usual comfort of the thought didn't settle him. The trees loomed taller than he remembered, their branches twisting into shapes that seemed to watch him as he passed. He hummed a little tune to cheer himself, but the notes faltered, swallowed by the fog. Pooh was on his way to Christopher Robin's house, though he couldn't recall why. A letter had arrived that morning, slipped under his door while he slept, its crisp envelope startlingly out of place among the pine cones and twigs of his cozy home. The handwriting was elegant, precise, with loops and flourishes that made Pooh's head spin when he tried to read it. The letter had simply said, "Dear Mr. Pooh, your presence is requested at the residence of Christopher Robin at precisely 6 o'clock this evening. A matter of utmost urgency requires your attendance. Do not delay. Yours sincerely, H. Poirot Pooh." Didn't know anyone named H. Poirot, but the words utmost urgency had stuck in his mind like a stubborn burr. Christopher Robin would know what to do, Pooh thought. Christopher Robin always knew. So with the letter tucked into his paw, he trudged through the fog, unaware of the eyes that followed him from the shadows, eyes that gleamed with a hunger older than the wood itself. Meanwhile, far from the whimsical paths of the 100-acre wood, a train rattled through the English countryside, its wheels screeching against the tracks as it wound through mist-choked valleys. Hercule Poirot sat in a first-class carriage, his gloved hands folded neatly over the silver head of his cane. His mustache, impeccably waxed, twitched slightly as he studied the letter in his lap. It was identical to the one Pooh had received, though Poirot's copy was written on finer paper, embossed with a subtle crest that he didn't recognize. The summons to the 100-acre wood was peculiar, to say the least. Poirot, a man of logic and order, disliked peculiarities unless they could be neatly unraveled, like a knot in a skein of wool. The letter had arrived at his London flat 2 days prior, delivered by a courier who vanished into the rain before Poirot could question him. The contents were brief but intriguing. "Dear Monsieur Poirot, a matter of grave importance requires your unparalleled expertise. You are summoned to the 100-acre wood, to the residence of one Christopher Robin, where a darkness threatens to unravel all that is dear. Arrive by the evening of the 9th. Discretion is paramount. Yours faithfully, C.R. Poirot's sharp eyes had lingered on the initials. C.R. Christopher Robin. The name stirred a faint memory, children's tales perhaps. Overheard in passing, but Poirot dismissed such whimsy. What mattered was the tone of the letter, urgent, secretive, and tinged with a fear that the writer had tried and failed to conceal. Poirot's little gray cells buzzed with curiosity. A darkness, the letter said. In his long career, Poirot had faced many darknesses, murder, betrayal, greed, but something about this summons felt different. It was as if the words themselves carried a chill, a whisper of something ancient and malevolent. He glanced out the train window where the fog pressed against the glass like a living thing. The countryside had given way to denser woods, and, The train's rhythm slowed as it approached a small, forgotten station. The sign, barely visible through the mist, read, 100-acre halt. Poirot adjusted his hat, straightened his coat, and stepped onto the platform, his polished shoes clicking against the damp wood. The station was deserted, save for the fog and a faint, eerie hum that seemed to come from the trees themselves. Poirot's mustache twitched again. Mon Dieu, he murmured. This place, it is not natural. In a quiet village in St. Mary Mead, Miss Jane Marple sat in her parlor, her knitting needles clicking softly as she worked on a scarf that would never be finished. The room was warm, lit by a crackling fire, but the letter on the table beside her tea tray cast a shadow over her thoughts. Like Poirot's, it was a summons to the 100-acre wood, written in the same elegant hand, signed with the same cryptic initials. C.R. Miss Marple's sharp eyes, undimmed by age, had read the letter a dozen times, each pass revealing nothing, new but deepening her sense of unease. The letter spoke of a darkness and a threat to the 100-acre wood, a place Miss Marple knew only from the stories her nephew's children loved. She had smiled at the tales of Pooh and Piglet, finding their simplicity charming, but the letter hinted at something far less innocent. Miss Marple trusted her instincts, honed by years of observing human nature in her quiet village. People, she knew, were capable of great kindness and greater cruelty. But this letter suggested something beyond people, something that made her fingers pause mid-stitch and her heart quicken. She had taken the evening train, her small suitcase packed with practical items, a shawl, a notebook, and a silver cross she always carried on journeys. The train had deposited her at the same desolate station where Poirot now stood, though their paths had not yet crossed. Miss Marple, ever observant, noted the unnatural stillness of the place. The fog seemed to pulse as if alive, and the trees whispered in a language she couldn't understand. She pulled her shawl tighter and set off down the path toward Christopher Robin's house, her steps steady but her mind alert. There is wickedness here, she murmured, her voice soft but firm. And I shall find it out. Back in the wood, Pooh reached the clearing where Christopher Robin's house stood. The cottage, once bright with cheerful yellow paint, looked faded, its windows dark and uninviting. The fog was thicker here, curling around the chimney like a serpent. Pooh knocked on the door, his paw trembling slightly. Christopher Robin? He called, his voice swallowed by the mist. There was no answer, only a faint creak from within, as if the house itself were groaning. Pooh pushed the door open, revealing a dimly lit room. The furniture was familiar, Christopher Robin's chair, the table where they'd shared honey, but everything was wrong. The air was cold, the fire in the hearth long dead. Dust coated the surfaces, and cobwebs hung in the corners like tattered curtains. On the table sat a single object, a honey pot, its lid askew, its contents black and viscous, oozing onto the wood. Pooh's nose wrinkled. "That's not honey," he said, his voice barely a whisper. A shadow moved in the corner of the room, and Pooh froze. It was tall, too tall for Christopher Robin, and its edges seemed to blur into the darkness. "Who's there?" Pooh asked, his heart thumping. The shadow didn't answer, but a low, guttural sound filled the room, a sound like laughter, but twisted as if it came from a throat that wasn't human. Pooh backed toward the door, his paws slipping on the floor. The shadow lunged, and Pooh stumbled outside, the door slamming shut behind him. He ran, the fog swallowing his cries, until he collided with something solid. "Oh, bother," Pooh exclaimed, tumbling to the ground. He looked up to see a man in a pristine suit, his mustache quivering with indignation. "Monsieur, you will please to watch where you are going," Hercule Poirot said, brushing dirt from his coat. Before Pooh could respond, a soft voice cut through the fog. "Gentlemen, I believe we are all here for the same reason," Miss Marple said, stepping into the clearing. Her eyes, sharp as ever, took in Pooh's trembling form and Poirot's composed demeanor. "And I suspect we are not alone." The fog thickened, and from the trees came that same guttural laugh, now joined by others, a chorus of malevolent voices that seemed to circle them. Pooh clutched the letter, Poirot gripped his cane, and Miss Marple's fingers tightened around her cross. Whatever had summoned them to the 100-acre wood was watching, waiting, and it was far from friendly. The clearing grew colder, the fog so dense it seemed to press against their skin. Pooh's eyes darted to the trees where shapes flickered, too quick to see clearly, too wrong to be animals. Poirot's mind raced, cataloging every detail. The mean, unnatural fog, the abandoned house, the blackened honeypot. Miss Marple, meanwhile, noted the silence of the wood. No owls, no crickets, only that dreadful laughter. Each of them felt it, the sense that they had stepped into a trap, one set not by a person but by something older, hungrier, and far more cunning. "Monsieur Pooh," Poirot said, his voice steady despite the chill. "This letter of yours, it is the same as mine, oui?" Pooh nodded, holding out the crumpled paper. Poirot's eyes narrowed as he compared it to his own. "The handwriting, it is identical. But why us? A bear, a detective, and—" he glanced at Miss Marple, who raised an eyebrow. "An old woman who sees more than most," Miss Marple finished for him. "We are here because someone, or something, believes we can solve this mystery. Or perhaps because it wishes to toy with us." Pooh whimpered. "I don't like toys that bite," he said, his voice small but resolute. The laughter grew louder, closer, and the shadows in the fog began to take shape. Tall, twisted figures with eyes that glowed like embers. The trio backed toward the cottage, their backs to the door, as the wood itself seemed to close in around them. Chapter 2. The 100-Acre Wood Mystery. The fog in the 100-acre wood thickened, a living wall that pressed against Winnie the Pooh, Hercule Poirot, and Miss Marple as they stood back to back outside Christopher Robin's abandoned cottage. The guttural laughter from the trees had faded, but its echo lingered in their minds, a taunting promise of return. The shadows that had circled them moments ago had retreated into the mist, but their presence was a weight on the air, a malevolent watchfulness that made Pooh's fur prickle and Poirot's mustache quiver. Miss Marple's sharp eyes scanned the fog, her calm exterior belying the unease that gnawed at her. The wood, once a place of innocent adventures, was now a labyrinth of dread, and the trio knew they could not stay still for long. "Monsieur Pooh," Poirot said, his voice cutting through the oppressive silence, "you know this wood, oui? Is there a place of safety, a place where we may regroup?" His cane tapped the ground, a rhythmic anchor to his composure, though his eyes darted to the trees, where the fog seemed to pulse with unnatural life. Pooh rubbed his paws together, his round face creased with thought. "There's Piglet's house," he said slowly. "Or Rabbit's, or maybe Owl's tree. But they're all so far, and the paths aren't right anymore." He glanced at the trail behind them, which twisted into the fog in a way that made his head spin. The familiar landmarks of the wood, the bridge, the stream, the honey tree were obscured, as if the forest had rearranged itself to confuse them. Miss Marple adjusted her shawl, her fingers brushing the silver cross at her neck. "The paths may not be right," she said, her voice steady. "But we cannot stay here. The cottage is no sanctuary, and whatever summoned us intends for us to move." She gestured to the letters clutched in Pooh's paw and Poirot's hand. "These were not sent idly. There is a purpose, and we must uncover it before whatever stalks us decides we are no longer amusing." Pooh whimpered, his eyes wide. "I don't like being amusing to things that laugh like that," he said, his voice trembling but resolute. He took a tentative step forward, then paused, sniffing the air. "There's something sweet, like honey but not quite." His nose twitched, drawn to a faint scent that cut through the bitter fog. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A scent, you say, in this miasma?" He inhaled deeply, his mustache twitching. "Oui, there is something cloying, unnatural. Lead us, Monsieur Pooh. Your nose, it may be our guide." With Pooh in front, sniffing cautiously, the trio ventured into the fog, the path beneath their feet uneven and slick with something that wasn't quite mud. The trees loomed closer, their branches clawing at the air, and the silence was broken only by the occasional snap of a twig or a distant guttural chuckle that made Pooh's heart thump. Miss Marple's steps were measured, her eyes scanning every detail. The way the fog seemed to coil around certain trees, the faint scratches on the bark, the unnatural stillness of the undergrowth. Poirot, meanwhile, catalogued everything in his mind, his little gray cells working to piece together the puzzle, the letters, the abandoned cottage, the blackened honeypot, and now this strange, sweet scent. The path led them to a clearing Pooh didn't recognize, though he was certain he knew every corner of the wood. In the center stood a tree, its trunk gnarled and blackened, as if scorched by a fire that left no ash. From its branches hung dozens of honeypots suspended by frayed ropes that swayed in a breeze the trio couldn't feel. The pots dripped a viscous black liquid that pooled on the ground, forming a circle that shimmered like oil. The sweet scent was overpowering here, but it was wrong. Sickly, like honey left to rot in a grave. "Oh, bother," Pooh whispered, his paws trembling. "Those aren't my honeypots." He took a step back, bumping into Poirot, who steadied him with a firm hand. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, his eyes fixed on the tree. "This is no natural phenomenon. The pots, the liquid, the arrangement. It is deliberate, a display." He stepped closer, his cane sinking slightly into the ground, and examined the nearest pot. The black liquid oozed from a crack in the clay, and as he leaned in, he saw something inside, a faint, pale shape like a finger curled in the darkness. He recoiled, his face pale. "This is no honey, Monsieur Pooh. This is something else." Miss Marple joined him, her eyes narrowing as she studied the tree. "A ritual, perhaps," she said softly. "In my village, there was a woman who believed in old magics, charms, offerings. This feels like that, but darker. Something is being fed here." She pointed to the ground, where the black liquid had formed symbols, spirals, crosses, and shapes that hurt the eyes to look at too. Long Pooh's nose twitched again, and he pointed to the far side of the clearing. There's something moving," he said, his voice barely audible. The fog parted slightly, revealing a small, trembling figure. Piglet, his pink ears drooping, his eyes wide with terror. He was clutching a tattered scarf, and his fur was streaked with mud or something darker. "Piglet!" Pooh cried, starting toward him, but Miss Marple grabbed his paw. "Wait," she said sharply. "Look at him. Something is wrong." Piglet's movements were jerky, unnatural, as if he were a puppet on frayed strings. His eyes, usually bright with nervous kindness, were glassy, reflecting the ember-like glow of the shadows that had stalked them earlier. He opened his mouth, but instead of his usual stammer, a low guttural sound emerged, the same laughter they'd heard in the fog. "Pooh," he said, his voice distorted. "You shouldn't have come." Poirot stepped forward, his cane raised like a weapon. "Monsieur Piglet, you are not yourself. Tell me, who has done this to you? What is this darkness?" Piglet's head tilted at an unnatural angle, and a smile spread across his face too. "Fire's too sharp. The wood," he said, his voice a chorus of whispers. "The wood is hungry. It wants you too." He lunged faster than his small frame should allow, and Poirot barely dodged, his coat tearing as Piglet's tiny paws swiped at him. Miss Marple pulled Pooh back, her voice calm but urgent. "Run, Mr. Pooh! To the path!" Pooh obeyed, his paws pounding the ground as the trio fled the clearing, Piglet's laughter chasing them. The honeypot swayed violently, the black liquid splashing onto the ground, and the fog seemed to scream, a sound that clawed at their minds. They ran until the path widened, leading to a familiar landmark, the bridge over the stream where Pooh and Christopher Robin once played Pooh Sticks. But the stream was wrong. Its water was thick, black and sluggish, like the liquid from the pots. The bridge creaked under their weight, and as they crossed, Miss Marple noticed carvings on the wooden railings. More of those strange symbols, etched deep and stained with something red. "We cannot outrun this," Poirot panted, his composure fraying. "The wood itself is against us. We must understand what we face." Miss Marple nodded, her eyes scanning the fog. It's not just the wood. It's something older, something that has taken root here. The letters brought us together, for a reason. Perhaps to stop it, perhaps to feed it. She glanced at Pooh, who was clutching his letter like a lifeline. Mr. Pooh, you know this place best. Have you ever seen anything like this before? Pooh shook his head, his eyes filling with tears. The wood was kind, he said. It was home. But now it's all wrong, and Piglet... His voice broke. Piglet wasn't Piglet. Poirot's eyes gleamed with determination. Then we must find the others. Rabbit, Owl, whoever else resides here. If Piglet has been altered, they may be in danger, or they may be part of it. The fog parted briefly, revealing a faint light in the distance. Owl's tree, its windows glowing with an eerie, flickering glow. But as they approached, the ground beneath them trembled, and the black stream surged, its surface rippling with shapes that looked like faces screaming. Silently, the laughter returned, louder, closer, and the shadows in the fog began to take form again, taller, sharper, their eyes burning through the mist. Pooh clutched Poirot's sleeve. Miss Marple raised her cross, and the trio braced themselves as the wood closed in, its hunger palpable. The mystery of the 100-acre wood was no longer just a puzzle. It was a fight for survival, and the answers lay somewhere in the darkness ahead. Chapter 3. Poirot's peculiar observations. The fog in the 100-acre wood clung to the trio like a second skin, its icy tendrils seeping into their bones as they stumbled toward the flickering light of Owl's tree. Winnie the Pooh's paws trembled, his round eyes darting to the shadows where the ember-eyed figures had vanished, their guttural laughter now a faint, mocking echo. Hercule Poirot gripped his cane tightly, his polished shoes sinking into the unnatural muck that coated the path. Miss Jane Marple walked with measured steps, her shawl drawn tight, her sharp gaze cutting through the mist to note every detail. The twisted branches, the blackened stream, the faint scratches on the ground that seemed to follow them. The wood was no longer a place of whimsy. It was a predator, and they were its prey. Monsieur Pooh, Poirot said, his voice low but firm. This light, it is Owl's residence, oui? His mustache twitched, a telltale sign of the little gray cells at work. The glow ahead was unnatural, not the warm amber of a hearth, but a sickly pulsating green that seemed to writhe within the fog. Pooh nodded, his voice small. It's Owl's tree, I think. But it doesn't feel like Owl's tree. Owl's tree is wise and safe, and this... He trailed off, sniffing the air. The sweet, sickly scent from the honeypots lingered, now mixed with something acrid like burnt feathers. Oh, bother, he whispered, clutching the crumpled letter in his paw. Miss Marple's eyes narrowed. We must be cautious, she said softly. What we saw with Piglet was no mere trick. This wood is under a thrall, and Owl may not be as we expect. Her fingers brushed the silver cross at her neck, a quiet anchor against the dread that pressed against them. Poirot's gaze flicked to her, then back to the path. Madame, you speak of thralls, of darkness, but Hercule Poirot does not deal in superstitions. There is a logic here, a pattern, and I shall uncover it. Yet even as he spoke, his hand tightened on his cane, and his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. The wood defied his orderly world, its malevolence a puzzle with too many jagged pieces. The path narrowed, forcing them closer together as they approached the tree. Its trunk was massive, its bark cracked and oozing a black sap that dripped onto the ground, forming puddles that shimmered with the same green glow as the windows above. The branches twisted upward, their tips clawing at the sky, and from them hung more of the honeypots, their ropes creaking as they swayed. The black liquid inside dripped steadily, each drop hissing as it hit the earth, as if the ground itself recoiled. Poirot stopped, raising a hand. Attendez, he said sharply. He knelt, his coat brushing the muck, and examined the ground. Faint footprints, small like Piglet's, but joined by larger clawed marks, crisscrossed the area, leading to the base of the tree. "These tracks," he murmured, "they are fresh, and they do not belong to one creature alone." He traced a claw mark with his gloved finger, his face grim. "Something else walks with Piglet. Something unnatural." Pooh whimpered, his eyes fixed on the tree. "Owl will know what to do," he said, more to himself than the others. "Owl always knows." But his voice lacked conviction, and the green light pulsed faster as if mocking his hope. Miss Marple studied the honey pots, her lips pursed. "These are not mere decorations," she said. "They're offerings. In my village there were tales of old rites, sacrifices to appease things that should not be named. These pots, this sap, they feed something." She pointed to the base of the tree, where the black sap had formed a crude altar, piled with bones, small, delicate, like those of rabbits or birds, but some disturbingly larger. Poirot's mustache quivered. "An altar, you say? Then we are dealing with a mind, a purpose, not a beast but a will." He stood, brushing dirt from his gloves. "We must enter this tree, confront this owl, and demand answers. But we shall do so with the utmost caution." The bank trio approached the tree's entrance, a hollow carved into the trunk, its edges jagged like a wound. The green light spilled out, casting their shadows long and distorted on the ground. Pooh hesitated, his paw hovering near the hollow. "What if Owl isn't Owl?" he whispered, echoing Miss Marple's warning. "Then we shall see what he has." "Become," Poirot said, his voice steel. He stepped inside, his cane tapping the wooden floor, followed by Miss Marple, her cross glinting in the eerie light. Pooh took a deep breath, muttering, "Think, think, think," and followed, the fog swallowing the entrance behind them. Inside, Owl's tree was a mockery of its former self. The cozy interior, Pooh remembered, shelves of books, a crackling fire. Owl's perch was gone, replaced by a cavernous space that seemed too large for the tree's exterior. The walls pulsed with the same black sap, veins of it threading through the wood like a heartbeat. The green light came from orbs embedded in the ceiling, their glow revealing a floor littered with feathers, bones, and scraps of parchment scrawled with the same symbols they'd seen on the bridge. The air was thick, heavy with the acrid scent of burnt feathers and that sickly sweet rot. "Owl?" Pooh called, his voice echoing unnaturally. There was no answer, only a faint rustling from above, where the shadows writhed. Poirot's eyes scanned the room, cataloging every detail. The symbols, the orbs, the absence of furniture. "This is no home," he said. "This is a lair." Miss Marple knelt by a pile of parchment, her fingers tracing the symbols. "These are not random," she said. "They tell a story, or perhaps a spell. I've seen similar markings in old books, grimoires they called them. This place is a focal point, a nexus of whatever has corrupted the wood." Before Poirot could respond, a voice rasped from the shadows above, dry and sharp, like the snap of a breaking branch. "You should not to be here." The words were Owl's, but the tone was wrong. Hollow, layered, as if spoken by many throats at once. A shape descended, its wings spreading wide, blotting out the green light. Owl landed on a gnarled perch, but he was no longer the wise bird Pooh knew. His feathers were patchy, streaked with black sap, and his eyes glowed with the same ember-like fire as the shadows in the fog. His beak clicked and his head tilted at an impossible angle. Pooh took a step back, his heart pounding. "Owl, it's me, Pooh, don't you remember?" Owl's eyes fixed on him, unblinking. "Pooh," he said, the word dripping with malice. "Sweet, simple Pooh. The wood remembers you. It hungers for you." His wings twitched, and the orbs pulsed faster, the sap veins in the walls throbbing in time. Poirot stepped forward, his cane raised. "Monsieur Owl, you will explain yourself. What is this hunger? Who has done this to you, to this wood?" His voice was commanding, but a bead of sweat traced his brow, betraying his unease. Owl's beak opened, and that guttural laughter filled the room, the same chorus they'd heard in the fog. "You seek answers, little man. The wood gives no answers. It takes, it feeds, and you—" His eyes shifted to Poirot, then Miss Marple, then Pooh. You are its feast. Miss Marple's voice cut through the laughter, calm but firm. You are not Owl, you wear his form, but you are something else. Tell me, what do you want with us? Why the letters? Owl's head snapped toward her, his eyes narrowing. Clever, clever, he hissed. The letters were bait, old woman, to draw you here to this place where the veil is thin. The wood chose you, heart, mind, and soul. He gestured to Pooh, Poirot, and Miss Marple in turn. It will break you and it will feed. The floor trembled and the sap veins burst, spraying black liquid that burned where it touched. Pooh yelped, dodging a stream, while Poirot pulled Miss Marple back. Owl spread his wings, his form growing larger, his feathers melting into the shadows until he was less bird than nightmare, a mass of claws and eyes that filled the room. Run! Poirot shouted, and the trio scrambled for the entrance, the laughter chasing them as the tree itself seemed to collapse inward, the walls closing like a trap. They burst into the fog, the tree's hollow ceiling behind them with a sickening crunch. The ground shook and the honeypots fell, shattering and releasing their black contents, which writhed like living things. Pooh clung to Poirot, tears streaming down his face. Owl's gone, he sobbed. They're all gone. Not all, Miss Marple said, her voice steady despite the chaos. She pointed to the fog, where a new path had appeared leading deeper into the wood. Rabbit's house is that way, if the wood hasn't moved it. We must find him, and any others who remain. Poirot's eyes gleamed with determination. And we must understand these observations. The symbols, the sap, the transformation of owl and piglet, they are clues. There is a mind behind this, a will that plays with us. Hercule Poirot will not be played. He adjusted his torn coat, his resolve unshaken despite the horror. But as they set off, the fog whispered, and the shadows returned, their eyes brighter, their forms more solid. The wood was watching, waiting, and Poirot's peculiar observations had only scratched the surface of a mystery that threatened to consume them all. Chapter 4. Miss Marple's Village Wisdom. The fog in the 100-acre wood coiled tighter around Winnie the Pooh, Hercule Poirot, and Miss Jane Marple as they stumbled along the newly formed path, their breaths ragged from their escape from Owl's tree. The air was thick with the stench of rot and that sickly sweet decay, a reminder of the black sap and shattered honeypots that had nearly trapped them. Pooh's fur was matted with mud and something darker, his round eyes wide with fear as he clutched Poirot's torn sleeve. Poirot's cane tapped the ground unevenly, his polished exterior fraying under the weight of the wood's unnatural malevolence. Miss Marple, however, walked with a quiet determination, her shawl drawn tight, her sharp eyes scanning the fog for signs of the path's destination, Rabbit's house, if the wood hadn't twisted it beyond recognition. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional drip of sap from the trees or a distant, guttural chuckle that made Pooh whimper. The shadows that had stalked them since their arrival were ever present, their ember-like eyes flickering just beyond the fog's edge, waiting. Miss Marple's fingers brushed the silver cross at her neck, her mind racing as she pieced together the fragments of the mystery, the letters that summoned them, Piglet's transformation, Owl's nightmarish form, and the symbols that pulsed with a life of their own. In her village of St. Mary Mead, she had unraveled countless secrets by observing the small things, gestures, glances, silences. Here in this corrupted wood, the small things were screams in the dark. Madame, Poirot said, his voice low but edged with urgency. You spoke of a nexus in Owl's tree, of old rites. Your village wisdom, it sees what my little gray cells have yet to grasp. What do you make of this abomination? He gestured to the path where the ground was scarred with claw marks and streaked with black sap, as if the wood itself bled. Miss Marple's lips pursed, her eyes narrowing as she studied a tree whose bark bore the same spiraling symbols they'd seen before. In St. Mary Mead, she said softly, there was a woman, Mrs. Blackett, who kept to herself. The villagers called her eccentric, but I saw more. She left offerings, bones, feathers, blood. at the edge of the woods, believing they appeased something ancient. The vicar called it superstition, but when children went missing, I wondered. She paused, her gaze distant. This wood is like that, but worse. It's not appeased. It's ravenous. Pooh's voice trembled. Ravenous? Like when I want honey but bigger? He rubbed his tummy, but the thought brought no comfort. Rabbit will know what to do. Rabbit's always organizing things. Poirot's mustache twitched. If this rabbit is like your piglet or owl, Monsieur Pooh, we may find no ally. But we must proceed. The answers lie ahead, and Hercule Poirot does not flee from answers, no matter how dark. The path twisted, the trees closing in until their branches formed a tunnel, their tips scraping the trio's shoulders. The fog pulsed with that sickly green glow, and the air grew colder, heavy with the weight of unseen eyes. Miss Marple's steps slowed as she noticed a pattern in the claw, marks deliberate, almost ritualistic, leading them forward like a shepherd herding prey. We're being guided, she murmured, not just followed. Whatever rules this wood wants us to see something. The path opened into a clearing, and there stood Rabbit's house, or what remained of it. The burrow, once a neat warren with a tidy garden, was a ruin. The entrance was jagged, widened by force, and the garden was choked with black vines that writhed like snakes. Honey pots hung from the surrounding trees, their black contents dripping into pools that reflected the green glow. The air was thick, with the acrid scent of burnt fur, and the ground was littered with carrot tops, snapped and stained with something red. Pooh's heart sank. "Oh, Rabbit," he whispered, tears welling. "Not you too." Miss Marple knelt by the entrance, her fingers tracing a symbol carved into the earth, a spiral within a cross, its lines pulsing faintly. "This is no accident," she said. "In my village, such marks were warnings or invitations. This is both." She stood, her eyes scanning the clearing. "Rabbit is here, or what's left of him. We must go inside." Poirot hesitated, his cane sinking into the muck. "Madame, you propose we enter another lair? After Owl?" His voice was sharp, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. Miss Marple met his gaze. "We have no choice, Monsieur Poirot. The wood brought us here, and it will not let us leave until it has what it wants. But I've learned this. Darkness thrives on fear. We must face it, or environmental friendly, or it will consume us." Pooh sniffled, clutching the letter. "I don't want to go in there," he said, his voice barely a whisper. But he followed them, his paws trembling, driven by a loyalty to his friends that outweighed his terror. The burrow's entrance was dark, the air inside thick with the stench of decay. Miss Marple led the way, her cross held tightly, its silver, glinting in the faint green light that seemed to seep from the walls. The tunnel twisted downward, its walls slick with black sap, the symbols now glowing faintly, as if alive. The sound of dripping water or something thicker echoed, and the laughter returned, a low, guttural hum that vibrated in their chests. At the tunnel's end, they found Rabbit's den, a cavernous space lit by more of those pulsating green orbs. The room was a nightmare. The walls were covered in black vines that moved, curling toward the trio like fingers. In the center stood Rabbit, or what had become of him. His fur was patchy, his eyes glowing with that ember-like fire, and his paws clutched a carrot that dripped black sap. His head twitched unnaturally, and his voice was a rasp, layered with the same chorus they'd heard from Owl. "You came," he said, his smile too wide. "The wood is pleased." Miss Marple stepped forward, her voice calm but commanding. "What are you? You are not Rabbit. What do you want with us?" Rabbit's laughter filled the room, joined by the shadows that materialized from the walls, their forms tall and jagged, their eyes burning. "Want?" he hissed. "The wood hungers. It feeds on innocence, on logic, on wisdom." He pointed to Pooh, Poirot, and Miss Marple in turn. "You were chosen to break its fast." Poirot's cane slammed against the ground. "Enough of this. You speak of hunger, of choice, but who chooses? Who sent the letters? Speak, or Hercule Poirot will make you." The shadows laughed, and Rabbit's form shimmered. his body stretching, his fur melting into something liquid and dark. "The letters were mine," he said, his voice a chorus of screams. "A game, a lure. The wood is eternal, and you are its sport." Miss Marple's eyes gleamed with sudden clarity. "A game," she said softly. "In my village, games had rules, even the cruel ones. You have rules, don't you? You need us to come willingly, to step into your trap." She held up her cross, and the shadows flinched, their laughter faltering. "You fear something, don't you?" Rabbit's form lunged, but Poirot was faster, swinging his cane with surprising force, cracking it against Rabbit's head. The creature staggered, and the shadows screamed, the orbs flickering. Pooh grabbed Miss Marple's hand, pulling her toward the tunnel. "Run!" he cried, his voice breaking. They fled, the burrow collapsing behind them, the vines lashing out like whips. They burst into the clearing, the fog swallowing them as the laughter roared. Louder, closer. Miss Marple's village wisdom had given them a moment's advantage, but the wood was far from finished with them. Chapter 5. Pooh's sticky situation. The fog in the 100-acre wood swallowed Winnie the Pooh, Hercule Poirot, and Miss Jane Marple as they staggered away from the ruins of Rabbit's burrow, their lungs burning from the acrid stench of black sap and the echo of that guttural, multi-voiced laughter ringing in their ears. Pooh's fur was streaked with muck, his round paws trembling as he clutched Miss Marple's shawl, his heart pounding with a fear he couldn't name. The wood, once his home, was a maze of nightmares, its paths twisting, its trees watching, and its shadows alive with ember-eyed hunger. Poirot's cane sank into the ground, his polished demeanor cracked by the relentless assault of the unnatural. Miss Marple's sharp eyes scanned the fog, her silver cross glinting faintly, her mind racing to connect the clues. The letters, the transformed friends, the symbols, and the wood's insatiable need for them to surrender. Pooh's nose twitched, catching a faint, familiar scent amidst the rot. Honey or something like it, sweet and warm, a whisper of the wood he'd loved. "Oh, bother," he murmured, his voice small but resolute. "There's honey somewhere, I think." He sniffed again, his head tilting, drawn to the scent like a moth to a flame. In his simple, thoughtful way, Pooh clung to the idea of honey as a comfort, a tether to the world before the fog and the laughter. "Monsieur Pooh," Poirot said, his voice sharp with urgency, "this scent, it is like the honey pots, oui? The ones that drip with that substance?" His mustache quivered, his little gray cells piecing together the pattern of lures, the letters, Piglet's voice, Owl's tree, Rabbit's den. "We must be cautious. The wood uses what we desire against us." Miss Marple nodded, her lips pursed. "It's a trap, Mr. Pooh, like the offerings I saw in St. Mary Mead. The wood knows your heart and it will twist it." She glanced at the path ahead, where the fog parted slightly, revealing a faint golden glow, warm and inviting, unlike the sickly green of Owl's tree or Rabbit's burrow. "But we cannot stay here. The shadows are closing in." Indeed, the fog pulsed with movement, the ember-eyed figures circling closer, their forms more solid now, tall, jagged, with claws that scraped the ground. Their laughter was a low hum, vibrating in the trio's chests, urging them to run, to choose a path, to play the wood's game. Pooh's eyes darted to the glow, his tummy rumbling despite his fear. Maybe it's real honey," he said, his voice hopeful but trembling. "Maybe it's a way out." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Hope is dangerous, Monsieur Pooh, but we have no choice. Lead us, but stay close." He gripped his cane like a weapon, his resolve unshaken despite the tear in his coat and the sweat on his brow. Miss Marple adjusted her shawl, her cross held tightly, her village wisdom whispering that the wood's traps were as much about the mind as the body. Pooh took a tentative step toward the glow, his nose guiding him, the scent of honey growing stronger, sweeter, almost overwhelming. The path wound through a grove of trees, their branches heavy with honey pots, but these were different. Golden, gleaming, their contents shimmering like liquid sunlight. The black sap was absent here, the ground firm and dry, the air warm. Pooh's heart lifted, a flicker of the old wood stirring in his chest. It's like before," he whispered, his paws itching to reach for a pot. The glow led to a clearing, and there, in its center, stood a massive honey tree, its trunk wide and golden, its branches laden with pots that dripped amber liquid into a pool below. The scent was intoxicating, filling Pooh's mind with memories of lazy days, of Christopher Robin's laughter, of honey shared with friends. He took a step forward, then another, his fear melting under the warmth of the light. "Mr. Pooh, wait." Miss Marple's voice was sharp, cutting through the haze. She grabbed his paw, her eyes fixed on the tree. "Look closer, it's too perfect." Her village instincts, honed by years of seeing through facades, screamed a warning. The tree's glow was too bright, the honey too pure, the clearing too untouched by the fog that choked the rest of the wood. Poirot knelt, examining the ground. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, his gloved finger tracing a faint line of black sap, hidden beneath the grass leading to the pool. "The honey, it is a mask. Beneath it, the same corruption." He stood, his eyes scanning the tree, noticing how the pot swayed without wind, how the liquid in the pool rippled with shapes, faces, hands, eyes, beneath its surface. But Pooh was already too close, his paw reaching for a pot, his eyes glazed with longing. "Just a little taste," he said, his voice dreamy. "It'll make everything better." The scent filled his mind, drowning out Poirot's warnings, Miss Marple's pleas. He climbed the tree, his paws sticking to the bark, the honey's warmth pulling him higher. The moment his paw touched a pot, the illusion shattered. The golden glow turned sickly green, the honey blackened, and the tree shuddered, its bark splitting to reveal veins of pulsing sap. The pots burst, spraying black liquid that burned where it touched, and the pool below surged, hands of liquid reaching for Pooh. He screamed, his paws trapped in the sticky sap, the tree's branches curling around him like claws. "Pooh," Miss Marple cried, rushing forward, but the ground cracked, vines of black sap erupting to block her path. Poirot swung his cane, shattering a vine, but more took its place, the wood's laughter roaring from every direction. The shadows materialized, their forms towering, their eyes blazing, chanting in a language that clawed at the mind. Pooh struggled, the sap creeping up his legs, burning yet cold, whispering promises of honey, of safety, if he'd only stop fighting. Think, he muttered, tears streaming down his face. In his heart he saw Christopher Robin, Piglet, Owl, Rabbit, his friends, lost to the wood's hunger. "I won't let it take me," he said, his voice small but fierce. He bit into the sap, his teeth sinking into its bitter cold, and the tree screamed, a sound that shook the clearing. The shadows faltered, and the vines recoiled, giving Poirot and Miss Marple a chance to reach the tree. Poirot climbed, his cane wedged into the bark, while Miss Marple held her cross aloft, its silver light cutting through the fog. "You will not have him," she shouted, her village wisdom fueling her defiance. The wood's laughter turned to rage, the shadows lunging, but Pooh's bite had weakened the tree, its sap slowing. Poirot reached Pooh, prying his paws free, the sap burning his gloves. "Courage, Monsieur Pooh," he said, his voice steady, despite the chaos. Together they slid down, landing in Miss Marple's arms as the tree collapsed, its roots writhing like a dying beast. The clearing dissolved into fog, the honey pots gone, the golden glow replaced by the wood's familiar dread. Pooh sobbed, his fur singed, his paws raw. "I just wanted honey," he said, his voice breaking. But it wasn't honey. It was a lie. Miss Marple knelt beside him, her hand gentle on his shoulder. "The wood lies, Mr. Pooh, but you fought it. That's bravery, the kind I've seen in the quietest souls." Her eyes met Poirot's, a silent agreement passing. Between them, the wood's traps were personal, designed to exploit their deepest desires. Poirot's mustache twitched, his mind racing. The tree, it reacted to Monsieur Pooh's resistance. The wood is not invincible. There is a weakness, and we shall find it. He pointed to a new path, barely visible in the fog, leading deeper into the wood. We must continue. The answers lie with the others, Eeyore, Tigger, Christopher Robin. But as they set off, the fog whispered, and the shadows returned, their eyes brighter, their claws sharper. Pooh's sticky situation had nearly claimed him, but it had also revealed a truth. The wood could be fought, if they could hold on to their hearts. The mystery of the 100-acre wood was a battle of wills, and Pooh's courage had lit a spark in the darkness. Chapter 6. The Case of the Missing Honey. The fog in the 100-acre wood clung to Winnie the Pooh, Hercule Poirot, and Miss Jane Marple like a living thing, its icy tendrils curling around their ankles as they trudged along a path that seemed to writhe beneath their feet. Pooh's fur was singed and matted, his paws still stinging from the black sap that had nearly claimed him in the honey tree's trap. His round eyes darted nervously, searching for the familiar comfort of his home, his honey pots, his friends. But the wood offered no comfort, only shadows and whispers. Poirot's cane tapped unevenly, his once pristine coat now torn and stained, his mustache quivering as his little gray cells grappled with the chaos of a world that defied logic. Miss Marple's steps were steady, her shawl drawn tight, her sharp eyes cutting through the fog to note every detail. The claw marks on the trees, the faint glow of symbols etched in the ground, the ever-present laughter that pulsed like a heartbeat. The air was heavy with the acrid stench of burnt feathers and rot, but Pooh's nose twitched, catching a faint, fleeting scent of honey. Real honey, not the sickly sweet lure of the wood's traps. "Oh, bother," he murmured, his voice small but hopeful. "There's honey somewhere. My honey, maybe." His tummy rumbled, a reminder of simpler days when a pot of honey could solve any problem. But the memory was tainted now, overshadowed by the blackened pots, the writhing sap, and the twisted forms of piglet, owl, and rabbit. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on his cane. "Monsieur Pooh, this honey. It is another lure. We have seen what the wood does with desire." His voice was sharp, but a flicker of doubt crossed his face. The wood's traps were cunning, tailored to each of them. Pooh's love for honey, his own need for order, Miss Marple's faith. Yet Pooh's resistance in the honey tree had shaken the wood, revealing a crack in its power. Could this scent be a clue, not a trap? Miss Marple adjusted her shawl, her fingers brushing the silver cross at her neck. "In my village," she said softly, "people hid their secrets in plain sight. A stolen loaf of bread, a missing shawl. They were never truly gone, just repurposed. This honey, Mr. Pooh, it may be yours, but it's been taken, changed. We must find it, not for comfort, but for answers." Her eyes scanned the path where the fog parted slightly, revealing a trail of golden droplets, honey, glistening on the ground, leading deeper into the wood. Pooh's heart lifted, then sank. "My honey," he whispered, tears welling. "They took it, didn't they? Like they took Piglet and Owl and Rabbit." His paws clenched, a spark of determination igniting in his simple, loyal heart. "I want it back. I want them back." Poirot nodded, his mustache twitching with resolve. "Then we follow this trail, but with caution. The wood plays its game, but Hercule Poirot will not be played." He gestured to the droplets, noting their unnatural sheen, the way they seemed to pulse in time with the fog's rhythm. "This is no ordinary honey. It is a breadcrumb leading us to the heart of this mystery." The trio set off, Pooh in front, his nose guiding them, Poirot and Miss Marple flanking him, their senses alert. The path twisted through a grove of trees. There, branches heavy with more honey pots, but these were cracked, empty, their golden contents drained into the ground. The droplets led to a clearing, and Pooh stopped short, his breath catching. "My house," he whispered, his voice breaking. There, in the center of the clearing, stood Pooh's home, or what was left of it. The cozy tree hollow was a ruin, its entrance gaping like a wound, its walls streaked with black sap. The familiar sign, "Mr. Sanders," hung crookedly, dripping with the same viscous liquid that had burned Pooh's paws. Inside, The air was thick with the scent of honey, but it was wrong, tainted, mixed with the stench of decay. The floor was littered with shattered pots, their contents gone, replaced by pools of black sap that writhed with faint ghostly shapes, faces, hands, eyes, beneath the surface. Pooh's knees buckled, and he sank to the ground, tears streaming down his face. "My honey," he sobbed. "My home. It's all gone." The loss was more than physical. It was the theft of his world, his safety, his joy. The wood had taken everything, leaving only despair. Miss Marple knelt beside him, her hand gentle on his shoulder. "Not all is lost, Mr. Pooh," she said, her voice calm but firm. "In St. Mary Mead, when something was stolen, we looked for where it was hidden. Your honey is here somewhere, and it holds a secret. We must find it." Her eyes scanned the room, noting the symbols carved into the walls, the same spirals and crosses they'd seen before, now glowing faintly with that sickly green light. Poirot stepped inside, his cane probing the floor, avoiding the sap pools. "Madam is correct," he said, his voice steady despite the horror. "This is no mere theft. The honey, it is a symbol, a key. The wood has taken it for a purpose." He examined a shattered pot, its rim etched with a new symbol, a circle, bisected by a jagged line like a broken heart. "This mark, it is different. It speaks of sacrifice, of something taken and transformed." As they searched, the fog outside thickened and the laughter returned, a low guttural hum that vibrated through the walls. The shadows gathered, their ember eyes brighter, their forms more solid, clawing at the edges of the clearing. Pooh's nose twitched, catching a stronger scent of honey, not from the pots but from deeper within the house. A hidden nook where he'd kept his favorite pot, the one Christopher Robin had given him. "There," he said, pointing to a corner where the sap hadn't reached. He shuffled forward, his paws trembling, and pried open a loose board. Inside was a single honey pot, untouched, its golden contents glowing softly, free of the wood's corruption. Pooh's heart leapt, but as he reached for it, the ground shook, and the sap pools surged, hands of liquid reaching for him. "No," he cried, clutching the pot as the shadows screamed, their voices a chorus of rage. Poirot grabbed Pooh, pulling him back, while Miss Marple held her cross aloft, its silver light flaring. The shadows recoiled, but the sap hands lunged, wrapping around Pooh's legs, pulling him toward the pool. "It's mine," Pooh shouted, his voice fierce with a courage he didn't know he had. He smashed the pot against the floor, and the honey spilled, golden and pure, burning away the sap like fire through paper. The shadows shrieked, the walls trembled, and the laughter faltered, replaced by a howl of pain. The trio stumbled outside, the house collapsing behind them, the sap retreating like a wounded beast. Pooh clutched a shard of the pot, his tears mixing with the honey on his paws. "I saved it," he whispered, "but it's still gone." Miss Marple's eyes gleamed with quiet pride. "You did more than save it, Mr. Pooh. You hurt the wood. That honey was pure, and it weakened whatever holds this place." She pointed to the shard where a faint symbol glowed, the same broken heart Poirot had noted. "This is a clue, a piece of the puzzle." Poirot's mustache twitched, his mind racing. The honey is the key. It is not just food for Monsieur Pooh. It is a weapon, a resistance. The wood fears it as it fears Madame's cross." He gestured to a new path, barely visible in the fog, leading toward a distant, flickering light. "We must find the others, Eeyore, Tigger, Christopher, Robin. The honey, it links them all." But as they set off, the fog whispered and the shadows returned, their eyes blazing with renewed hunger. The case of the missing honey had revealed a truth. The wood could be fought, but its wrath was far from spent. Pooh's courage had bought them time, but the mystery of the 100-acre wood was a labyrinth, and they were running out of paths. Chapter 7. Clues in the tea leaves. The fog in the 100-acre wood pulsed with a malevolent rhythm, its icy tendrils wrapping around Winnie the Pooh, Hercule Poirot, and Miss Jane Marple as they followed a new path toward a distant, flickering light. Pooh clutched the shard of his honey pot, its faint, glowing symbol, a broken heart, warm against his paw, a fragile reminder of the home he'd lost and the spark of resistance he'd ignited. His fur was singed, his round eyes haunted by the twisted forms of piglet, owl, and rabbit, yet his heart clung to hope, however faint. Poirot's cane tapped the ground, his torn coat a testament to the wood's relentless assault, his mustache quivering as his little gray cells wrestled with the chaos of a mystery that defied order. Miss Marple walked with quiet resolve, her shawl drawn tight, her sharp eyes scanning the fog for patterns, her village wisdom attuned to the subtle signs that others missed. The wood was a predator, its laughter a low, guttural hum that vibrated in their bones, and the shadows with their ember-like eyes were never far behind. The air was thick with the stench of rot and burnt fur, but a new scent cut through it. Earthy, herbal like tea brewing over a fire. Pooh's nose twitched, his mind grasping for something familiar. "Tea," he murmured, his voice small but curious. "Like when Christopher Robin had tea parties with us." The memory was a flicker of warmth, quickly smothered by the fog's chill and the memory of his corrupted friends. Miss Marple's lips pursed, her eyes narrowing. "Tea leaves," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of understanding. "In St. Mary Mead, old Mrs. Harrow read tea leaves claiming they told futures. I never believed in such things, but I watched her closely. The patterns she saw were not magic. They were her mind piecing together truths others ignored. This scent, Mr. Pooh, it's no coincidence. The wood is showing us something, just as it showed you your honey." Poirot's gaze flicked to her, his mustache twitching with interest. "Madam, you suggest the wood leaves clues like a criminal leaving fingerprints? But why? If it hungers as it claims, why not simply consume us?" His voice was sharp, but a bead of sweat traced his brow, betraying the strain of confronting a force that mocked his logic. Miss Marple adjusted her shawl, her fingers brushing the silver cross at her neck. "In my village, the cruelest crimes were games, tests of will, of pride. The wood wants us to play, to unravel its puzzle, because our struggle feeds it. But every game has rules, and rules can be broken." She pointed to the path where the fog parted slightly, revealing a trail of dried leaves, tea leaves scattered like ashes leading toward the light. "These are our clues, and we must read them." Pooh's paws tightened around the pot shard, his heart heavy but resolute. "If it's tea, maybe it's Christopher Robin's tea," he said, his voice trembling with hope. "Maybe he's still here, waiting for us." The thought of his friend, untouched by the wood's corruption, gave him the courage to take a step forward, following the leaves. The path twisted through a grove of trees, their branches heavy with more honey. Pots, their black contents dripping into pools that shimmered with ghostly shapes. The tea leaves formed patterns on the ground, spirals, crosses, and that broken heart symbol, glowing faintly with the same sickly green light they'd seen in Owl's tree and Rabbit's burrow. Miss Marple knelt, her fingers tracing the leaves, her mind working like a loom, weaving threads of memory and observation. "These patterns," she said, "are a language. In St. Mary Mead, I learned that even the smallest detail, a misplaced cup, a torn hem, tells a story. This is the wood story, and it's about hunger." Poirot examined the leaves, his eyes narrowing. "We, a language, but one of intent. The symbols, the honey, the sap, they are connected, a ritual of sorts. But to what end? To summon us, to trap us, or to transform us as it did your friends, Monsieur Pooh." He glanced at Pooh, whose tears welled at the mention of piglet, owl, and rabbit. The path led to a clearing, and there, bathed in the flickering light, stood a table set for tea. It was Christopher Robin's table, or a twisted version of it, wooden, splintered, its surface stained with black sap. Cups and saucers were arranged neatly, but the tea within was dark, viscous, like the liquid in the honey pots. The air was thick with the herbal scent, now mixed with something metallic, like blood. At the head of the table sat a figure cloaked in shadow, its form too tall, too thin to be Christopher Robin. Its eyes glowed with that ember-like fire, and its hands, clawed, dripping with sap, held a teapot that steamed with an unnatural heat. Pooh's heart sank. "That's not Christopher Robin," he whispered, clutching the pot shard. It's another lie." Miss Marple stepped forward, her voice calm but commanding. "Who are you?" she demanded, her cross glinting in the light. "You use his table, his tea, but you are not him. What do you want with us, Pia?" Figure's head tilted, its smile too wide, its voice a chorus of whispers that echoed the wood's laughter. "Tea," it hissed, pouring the black liquid into a cup. "Drink and see. The leaves tell all." The cup steamed and the liquid writhed, forming shapes. Faces screaming silently, their eyes pleading. Poirot's cane slammed against the ground. "Enough of these games. You speak of tea leaves, of truths. But Hercule Poirot demands answers. Who sent the letters? What is this hunger that consumes the wood?" His voice was steel, but his hand trembled, the wood's relentless assault wearing even his resolve. The figure laughed, the sound shaking the trees, and the tea leaves on the ground swirled, forming new patterns. A circle, a spiral, a heart split by a jagged line. Miss Marple's eyes widened, her village wisdom recognizing the truth hidden in the chaos. "It's a ritual," she said softly. "In St. Mary Mead, there were stories of old gods, things that demanded offerings, not just blood, but belief. The wood feeds on us, on our hearts, our minds, our souls. The tea, the honey, the letters, they're bait to make us give ourselves willingly." Pooh's tears fell, his voice breaking. "I don't want to give anything," he said. "I just want my friends back." He stepped toward the table, drawn by the scent, the memory of tea with Christopher Robin, but Miss Marple grabbed his paw. "No, Mr. Pooh," she said, her voice urgent. "It's another trap. The leaves show us what it wants. Our surrender." She pointed to the patterns, now glowing brighter, the faces in the teacups screaming louder. The figure rose, its form stretching, its cloak melting into the fog, revealing a mass of shadows and claws. "Drink," it commanded, its voice a roar. The table shook, the cups shattering, the black tea spilling like blood, forming a pool that reached for the trio. The shadows lunged, their eyes blazing, their claws tearing at the air. Poirot swung, his cane shattering a cup while Miss Marple held her cross aloft, its light flaring. Pooh clutched the pot shard, its symbol glowing brighter, and he threw it into the pool. The honey's purity burned, the pool recoiling, the shadows screaming. As the table collapsed, the figure howled, its form dissolving into the fog, but its laughter lingered, promising return. The trio fled, the clearing swallowed by fog, the tea leaves scattering like ashes. Miss Marple's wisdom had read the clues, revealing the wood's need for their surrender, but the cost was high. Pooh's hope was fraying and the shadows were closer than ever. A new path appeared, leading toward a faint, mournful bray. Eeyore's voice, or something wearing it. The case of the missing honey had led to the tea leaves, and the tea leaves had shown them the truth. The wood's hunger was endless, but its game could be played. Chapter 8. Piglet's Brave Discovery. The fog in the 100-acre. Wood coiled like a serpent, its icy tendrils tightening around Winnie the Pooh, Hercule Poirot, and Miss Jane Marple as they followed a path toward the mournful bray that echoed through the trees. Pooh's fur was matted with the remnants of black sap, his paws clutching the glowing shard of his honey pot, its broken heart symbol, a faint beacon in the oppressive gloom. His round eyes were heavy with grief for his lost home and friends, yet his heart beat with a stubborn hope, fueled by the memory of Piglet's small, kind voice before the wood had twisted it. Poirot's cane tapped unevenly, his torn coat and sweat-streaked brow betraying the toll of the wood's relentless assault, though his mustache quivered with the resolve of his little gray cells. Miss Marple's steps were steady, her shawl drawn tight, her sharp eyes scanning the fog for patterns, her silver cross glinting as she pieced together the wood's ritualistic hunger. The laughter of the ember-eyed shadows was ever present, a guttural hum that pulsed in their bones, and the trees themselves seemed to lean closer, their branches clawing at the air. The air was thick with the stench of rot and burnt herbs, the lingering echo of the tea party's corrupted brew. but Pooh's nose twitched, catching a faint, familiar scent. Not honey, but something softer, like clean straw or a freshly washed scarf. "Piglet," he whispered, his voice trembling with hope and fear. "It smells like Piglet's house before everything went wrong." The memory of his tiny friend, trembling but brave, stirred Pooh's heart, even as he recalled the glassy-eyed creature that had lunged at them in the clearing. Miss Marple's lips pursed, her eyes narrowing as she studied the path. The ground was scattered with straw, not the blackened vines or tea leaves of before, but clean golden straw, leading toward the braying sound. "In St. Mary Mead," she said softly, "small things often held the greatest truths. A child's lost toy, a forgotten note. This straw, Mr. Pooh, it's a sign. Piglet may still be fighting in his own way." Her village wisdom saw the straw as a thread in the wood's tapestry, a clue to its game. Poirot's gaze flicked to the straw, his cane probing the ground. "We, a sign, but of what? A lure, like the honey, the tea, or something more?" His voice was sharp, but a flicker of curiosity crossed his face. The wood's traps were cunning, exploiting their desires. Pooh's love for honey, his own need for order, Miss Marple's faith. But Piglet's transformation had been different, less complete, as if his smallness made him harder to consume. "Monsieur Pooh, this scent, it leads us to your friend, but we must be prepared for what we find." The path twisted through a grove of trees, their branches heavy with empty honey pots, their cracked surfaces etched with the broken heart symbol. The straw grew thicker, forming a trail that glowed faintly, untouched by the black sap that coated the rest of the wood. The braying grew louder, joined by a faint, high-pitched whimper, Piglet's voice or a cruel imitation. Pooh's heart pounded, his paws tightening around the potsherd. "Piglet's brave," he said, his voice small, but firm. "He's scared, but he always tries. Maybe he's trying now." The path opened into a clearing, and there stood Piglet's house, or what remained of it. The tiny tree hollow was half collapsed, its roof caved in, its walls streaked with black sap. The straw path led inside, where a faint light flickered, not the sickly green of Owl's tree or Rabbit's burrow, but a soft, trembling pink like Piglet's fur. The air was heavy with the scent of straw and something sharper, like fear sweat. Scattered around the entrance were scraps of fabric. Piglet's, scarf torn and stained, but still bright against the wood's corruption. Pooh's tears welled. "Piglet," he whispered, stepping forward, but Miss Marple grabbed his paw. "Wait, Mr. Pooh," she said, her voice calm but urgent. "Look at the straw. It's deliberate, placed to guide us. In my village, such signs were often traps, but sometimes they were cries for help." Her eyes scanned the clearing, noting the absence of honeypots, the faint scratches on the ground. Small, like Piglet's paws, but frantic, as if clawing to escape. Poirot knelt, examining the scratches. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, his gloved finger tracing a pattern, a spiral but broken as if interrupted. "This is not the wood's work. This is resistance. Your Piglet, he fights, even now." His eyes gleamed with determination, his little gray cells seizing on the clue. "We must enter, but with the utmost caution. The wood watches." The trio stepped into the hollow, the pink light casting their shadows long and distorted. The interior was a ruin, the cozy furniture Pooh remembered, Piglet's tiny chair, his straw bed, smashed and coated with sap. But in the center of the room, on a cracked table, sat a single object, Piglet's scarf neatly folded, glowing with that soft pink light. Beside it was a piece of parchment, its edges singed, covered in shaky, childish writing. "Help. It's in the straw." Piglet. Pooh's heart leapt. "Piglet wrote this," he cried, reaching for the scarf, but Poirot's cane blocked his path. "Attendez," Poirot said sharply. "This is too convenient. The wood knows we seek your friend. This could be another trap." His eyes scanned the room, noting the straw scattered across the floor, forming patterns, spirals, crosses, but also something new. A crude drawing of a heart, not broken but whole, glowing faintly. Miss Marple knelt by the table, her fingers brushing the scarf. "This is Piglet's," she said softly. "In St. Mary Mead, I knew a boy who left notes in secret, afraid to speak aloud. Piglet's fear is his strength. He's left us a message, a discovery." She unfolded the scarf, revealing a small, straw-woven figure, a doll shaped like Piglet, its eyes made of tiny glowing stones. The stones pulsed and a faint whimper echoed from within. "Piglet!" Pooh cried, his voice breaking. He reached for the doll, but the floor trembled, and the sap on the wall surged, forming hands that reached for the trio. The shadows materialized, their ember eyes blazing, their laughter a deafening roar. The pink light flared, and the doll spoke, its voice Piglet, small and trembling but clear. "The straw, it holds the wood. Break it." The shadows lunged, and Poirot swung his cane, shattering a sap hand, while Miss Marple held her cross aloft, its silver light cutting through the fog. Pooh grabbed the doll, clutching it to his chest, and the straw began to glow, burning the sap where it touched. The shadows screamed, their forms faltering, and the room shook, the walls cracking as the pink light surged. "Run!" Poirot shouted, and the trio fled, the straw doll glowing brighter, its light pushing back the fog. They burst into the clearing, the hollow collapsing behind them, the sap retreating like a wounded beast. Pooh held the doll, tears streaming down his face. "Piglet, you're so brave," he whispered, the stones in the doll's eyes dimming, but still warm. Miss Marple's eyes gleamed with quiet pride. "Piglet's discovery," she said, "is the straw. It resists the wood, like your honey, Mr. Pooh, like my cross. It's a piece of the old wood, untainted." She pointed to the doll where the heart symbol glowed whole and strong. "He's shown us how to fight." Poirot's mustache twitched, his mind racing. "We, the straw, the honey, the faith, they are weapons. The wood fears what it cannot corrupt. But Piglet, where is he? This doll, it is a message, but not the whole truth." He gestured to a new path leading toward the mournful bray, now clearer, closer. "We must find Eeyore, and perhaps the true Piglet." The fog whispered, and the shadows returned, their eyes brighter, their claws sharper. Piglet's brave discovery had given them a weapon, but the wood's hunger was unrelenting, and the path to Eeyore promised new horrors. The mystery of the 100-acre wood was a game of survival, and the trio was running out of moves. Chapter 9. The suspect circle grows. The fog in the 100-acre wood clung to Winnie the Pooh, Hercule Poirot, and Miss Jane Marple like a shroud, its icy tendrils weaving through their clothes and minds as they followed the path toward Eeyore's mournful bray. Pooh clutched the straw doll, its glowing stones dim but warm, a fragile tether to Piglet's courage, and the hope that some part of his friend still fought against the wood's corruption. His fur was singed, his paws raw from the sap's burn, but his heart beat with a stubborn loyalty, even as the shadow's ember-eyed gazes burned through the fog. Poirot's cane tapped the ground, his torn coat hanging loosely, his mustache quivering as his little gray cells grappled with the mounting questions. Who sent the letters? What was the straw's power? And who, or what, was orchestrating the wood's hunger? Miss Marple's steps were steady, her shawl drawn tight, her sharp eyes scanning the fog for patterns, her silver cross glinting as she pieced together the clues hidden in the wood's twisted game. The laughter of the shadows was a constant hum, a guttural pulse that vibrated in their chests, and the trees leaned closer, their branches clawing at the air like fingers. The air was thick with the stench of rot and burnt straw, but a new scent lingered, musty, damp, like wet earth and sorrow. Pooh's nose twitched, his round eyes widening. "That's Eeyore's smell," he whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of hope and dread. "He's always gloomy, but he's kind. Maybe he's still himself." The memory of Eeyore's slow, steady presence stirred Pooh's heart, but the wood's track record, Piglet's glassy eyes, Owl's nightmare form, Rabbit's twisted malice, cast a shadow over his hope. Miss Marple's lips pursed, her eyes narrowing as she studied the path. The ground was scattered with patches of damp moss, not the blackened sap or golden straw of before, but forming faint patterns, spirals, crosses, and the broken heart symbol, glowing faintly in the fog. "In St. Mary Mead," she said softly, "suspicion often fell on the quiet ones, those who seemed harmless but carried secrets. This moss, Mr. Pooh, it's a sign like Piglet's straw. But it also warns us. The wood's game is widening, and we cannot trust anyone, not even Eeyore." Poirot's gaze flicked to her, his cane pausing mid-tap. "Madame, you suggest the circle of suspects grows? That this Eeyore or others may be complicit in this horror?" His voice was sharp, but a flicker of unease crossed his face. The wood's traps had been personal, Pooh's honey, the tea leaves, Piglet's scarf. But the letters had summoned them specifically, implying a mind that knew them, their strengths, their weaknesses. "We must consider all possibilities. The wood itself, it is a suspect, but so too are its inhabitants, transformed or not." Pooh's tears welled, his paws tightening around the straw doll. "Eeyore wouldn't hurt us," he said, his voice small but firm. "He's sad, but he's good. Aunt Tigger and Christopher Robin, they're my friends." Yet doubt crept into his heart, the wood's laughter whispering that no one was safe, no one untouched. The path twisted through a swampy hollow, the trees giving way to gnarled roots that rose from the ground like bones. The moss grew thicker, forming a trail that glowed faintly, leading to a ramshackle shelter. Eeyore's house, a lean-to of sticks and mud, now half submerged in a pool of black sap. The braying was louder here, a low, mournful sound that carried a weight of despair. Scattered around the shelter were tufts of gray fur, stained with sap, and a single, tattered tail, pinned to a tree with a claw-like thorn. The air was heavy, with the scent of wet earth and something sharper like blood. Pooh's heart sank. "Eeyore," he whispered, stepping forward. But Poirot grabbed his shoulder. "Attendez, Monsieur Pooh," Poirot said sharply. "This place, it is too quiet. The shadows, they do not laugh here." His eyes scanned the clearing, noting the absence of honeypots, the moss forming a circle around the shelter, its patterns more complex, spirals within spirals, hearts within crosses, as if the wood were writing a confession. Miss Marple knelt by the tail, her fingers brushing the thorn. "This is deliberate," she said softly. "In my village, cruelty was often disguised as carelessness, a lost pet, a broken fence. This tale is a message, a warning, or perhaps an invitation." Her eyes gleamed with quiet intensity, her village wisdom seeing the threads of intent woven into the wood's chaos. "Eeyore is here, but we must be ready for what he's become." The trio approached the shelter, the moss glowing brighter, the braying now a low, guttural moan. Inside, the air was thick with damp and decay, the walls dripping with sap that pulsed like veins. In the center stood Eeyore, or a shadow of him. His gray fur was patchy, his eyes glowing with that ember-like fire, his tail stump oozing black sap. His head hung low, but his voice was not his own, a chorus of whispers, layered with the wood's laughter. "You came," he rasped, his eyes fixed on Pooh. "The wood knew you would." Pooh's tears fell, his voice breaking. "Eeyore, it's me, Pooh. Don't you remember?" He held up the straw doll, its stones flaring, and Eeyore flinched, his form shimmering as if fighting itself. Miss Marple stepped forward, her cross glinting. "You are not Eeyore," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "You wear his form, but you are the wood's puppet. Tell us, what is this game? Why do you need us?" Eeyore's head tilted, his smile too wide, his voice a roar. "Need? The wood needs nothing. It takes, it breaks, but you—" He pointed a clawed hoof at Pooh, then Poirot, then Miss Marple. "You fight, and that makes the feast sweeter." The moss glowed brighter, forming a new pattern, a circle of eyes, watching, waiting. Poirot's cane slammed against the ground. "Enough riddles. You speak of a feast, but who serves it? Who sent the letters? Hercule Poirot demands the truth." His voice was steel, but his hand trembled, the wood's relentless assault wearing even his resolve. Before Eeyore could answer, a small, trembling figure darted from the shadows. Piglet, or a flicker of him, his pink fur pale but untainted, his eyes wide with terror but clear. "Pooh!" he squeaked, clutching a bundle of straw. "It's not Eeyore. It's in him. The straw, it shows the way." He threw the bundle into the sap pool, and it flared, burning the liquid, away, revealing a hidden trapdoor beneath. The shadows screamed, their forms lunging, but the straw's light held them back. Eeyore roared, his body stretching, his fur melting into a mass of claws and eyes. "You cannot stop it," he howled. But Piglet's straw burned brighter, and the trapdoor glowed, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. "Piglet," Pooh cried, rushing to his friend, but Piglet pushed him toward the trapdoor. "Go," he squeaked, his voice breaking. "I found it, the heart of the wood, but it's taking me." His eyes flickered, the ember light creeping in, and he shoved the straw doll into Pooh's paws before collapsing, the shadows swallowing him. Miss Marple grabbed Pooh, pulling him toward the trapdoor, while Poirot swung his cane, shattering a shadow's claw. "We must go," he shouted, and the trio descended, the staircase spiraling deeper, the moss and straw glowing behind them. The shadow's laughter followed, but Piglet's brave discovery had opened a path, and the suspect circle had grown. Eeyore, Tigger, Christopher Robin, and perhaps the wood itself. The mystery was a labyrinth, and they were running out of time. Chapter 10. A Clever Disguise. Unraveled, the fog in the 100-acre wood seemed to follow Winnie the Pooh, Hercule Poirot, and Miss Jane Marple into the spiraling staircase, its icy tendrils seeping through the cracks in the stone as they descended deeper into the earth. Pooh clutched the straw doll, its glowing stones pulsing faintly, a reminder of Piglet's courage and the fleeting hope that had cost his friend so dearly. His fur was matted with sap and tears, his round eyes haunted by the loss of Piglet, Eeyore, Owl, and Rabbit, yet his heart clung to the thought of Christopher Robin, the one friend who might still be waiting. Poirot's cane tapped the uneven steps, his torn coat hanging like a flag of surrender, though his mustache quivered with the relentless drive of his little gray cells. Miss Marple's steps were measured, her shawl drawn tight, her sharp eyes scanning the walls for patterns, her silver cross glinting as she pieced together the clues. The letters, the symbols, the straw, and the wood's insatiable hunger for their surrender. The shadow's laughter echoed above, a guttural chorus that grew fainter but no less menacing, as if the wood itself were holding its breath, waiting for the trio to uncover its deepest secret. The air grew colder, thicker, heavy with the scent of damp earth and something sharper, blood, or the memory of it. The walls of the staircase were carved with the same symbols they'd seen throughout the wood, spirals, crosses, broken hearts, but here they glowed with a sickly green light, pulsing in time with the doll's stones. Pooh's nose twitched, catching a faint trace of honey, not the corrupted black liquid but the pure golden warmth of his old pots. "Christopher Robin," he whispered, his voice trembling with hope. "He's down here, isn't he?" "He has. To be." Miss Marple's lips pursed, her eyes narrowing as she studied the symbols. "In St. Mary Mead," she said softly, "the deepest secrets were hidden in plain sight. A kind word masking cruelty, a smile hiding guilt. This staircase, these symbols, they lead to the heart of the wood's game. But we must be wary, mister." "Pooh, what we find may not be what we seek." Her village wisdom saw the patterns as a confession, a map to the truth, but also a warning of deception. Poirot's cane paused, his gaze fixed on a new symbol, a circle with a jagged line, like a wound. "Madame, you speak of deception, and Hercule Poirot agrees. The wood has played us from the start, the letters, the lures, the transformations. But this," he gestured to the symbol, "this is a signature, a mark of intent. Someone, or something, orchestrates this horror, and it hides behind a clever disguise." His voice was sharp, but a bead of sweat traced his brow, the weight of the wood's relentless assault testing even his resolve. The staircase ended in a cavern, vast and echoing, its walls slick with black sap that pulsed like a heartbeat. The green light was brighter here, emanating from a massive tree root that twisted through the center of the chamber, its surface carved with symbols that writhed as if alive. At its base sat a figure, cloaked in a tattered coat, its face hidden in shadow. The air was thick with the scent of honey, straw, and tea, but also something new, vibrant, bouncy, like the energy of a spring. Pooh's heart leapt. "Tigger!" he cried, stepping forward, but Miss Marple's hand stopped him. "Wait," she said, her voice calm but urgent. "Look at the root. It's the heart of the wood, and that figure, it's not alone." Her eyes scanned the cavern, noting the shadows that clung to the walls, their ember eyes brighter, their forms more solid, their claws scraping the stone. The root pulsed faster, and the figure raised its head, revealing a face that was Tigger's. But wrong. His stripes faded, his eyes glowing, his grin too wide, too sharp. "Hoo, the figure rasped, its voice a mockery of Tigger's bounce. "You found me, pals, but you're late. Too late for bouncin', too late for savin'." The root shuddered, and the sap surged, forming hands that reached for the trio. The shadows laughed, their chorus shaking the cavern, and the symbols glowed brighter, forming a new pattern. A heart, whole but bleeding. Poirot's cane slammed against the stone. "You are not Tigger," he shouted, his voice steel. "You wear his form, but Hercule Poirot sees through disguises. Reveal yourself. Who sent the letters? What is this heart you guard?" His little gray cells burned with the need for answers. The pieces of the puzzle, honey, straw, tea, symbols falling into place but not yet complete. The figure laughed, its form shimmering, stretching into something less Tigger and more nightmare, a mass of stripes and claws, its eyes blazing. "The heart?" it hissed, gesturing to the root. "It's the wood soul and you're its fuel. You came willingly, didn't you? The letters called, and you answered." The sap hands lunged, and Pooh yelped, clutching the straw doll, its stones flaring with pink light. Miss Marple stepped forward, her cross glinting. "You need us to choose," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "In my village, the darkest crimes were committed by those who hid behind kindness. You're no Tigger, no more than you were Piglet or Eeyore. You're the wood, or its puppet, and you fear our resistance." Her eyes gleamed with certainty, her wisdom unraveling the disguise. "The heart is vulnerable, isn't it?" The figure roared, and the root pulsed faster, the sap forming a wave that crashed toward them. But Pooh, driven by a surge of loyalty, held up the straw doll, its light burning brighter, joined by the glow of his honeypot shard. "For Piglet," he cried, his voice fierce despite his fear. The light cut through the sap, and the shadows screamed, their forms faltering. The figure staggered, its Tigger-like facade cracking, revealing a glimpse of something ancient, eyeless and hungry beneath. Poirot seized the moment, his cane striking the root, where the bleeding heart symbol glowed. The cavern shook, the sap retreating, and the figure howled, its form dissolving into the fog. The root cracked, revealing a hidden chamber within, a small, glowing figure, curled in a ball, surrounded by golden honey, straw, and a single teacup. It was Christopher Robin, or an echo of him, his face pale but untainted, his eyes closed as if sleeping. "Christopher Robin," Pooh cried, rushing forward, but the shadows surged, their laughter deafening. Miss Marple grabbed Pooh, pulling him back, while Poirot stood guard, his cane raised. "We have unraveled your disguise," Poirot shouted. "But the game is not over." The cavern trembled, the root collapsing, and the trio fled, carrying the image of Christopher Robin's form. The wood's heart was exposed, but its hunger was unrelenting, and the suspect circle had grown to include the one they'd hoped to save. The mystery was unraveling, but the cost was climbing. Chapter 11. The Great Gathering at Pooh Corner. The fog in the 100-acre wood thickened as Winnie the Pooh, Hercule Poirot, and Miss Jane Marple fled the collapsing cavern, its walls crumbling under the weight of the wood's wrath. Pooh clutched the straw doll, its glowing stones pulsing faintly, a fragile link to Piglet's courage and the hope that had driven them this far. His fur was matted with black sap, his paws raw, his round eyes haunted by the twisted forms of his friends, Piglet, Owl, Rabbit, Eeyore, Tigger, and the fleeting glimpse of Christopher Robin curled within the wood's heart. Poirot's cane tapped frantically, his torn coat flapping like a tattered flag, his mustache quivering as his little gray cells raced to piece together the puzzle. The letters, the symbols, the straw, the honey, and the question of Christopher Robin's role. Miss Marple's steps were steady, her shawl drawn tight, her sharp eyes scanning the fog for patterns, her silver cross glinting as she grappled with the Woods game, a ritual that demanded their surrender. The shadows' laughter roared behind them, a guttural chorus that shook the trees, their ember-eyed forms closing in, their claws scraping the earth. The air was heavy with the stench of rot, blood, and the faint, lingering sweetness of honey. But a new scent emerged. Familiar, warm, like the grass of Pooh Corner, where Pooh and his friends once played under Christopher Robin's watchful eye. Pooh's nose twitched, his heart lifting despite the dread. "Pooh Corner," he whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of hope and fear. "It's home." Or it was. The memory of lazy days of laughter and games clashed with the Woods' corruption, and he clutched the straw doll tighter, its stones flaring as if sensing their destination. Miss Marple's lips pursed, her eyes narrowing as she studied the path. The ground was scattered with blades of grass, not the blackened sap or glowing moss of before, but forming faint patterns, spirals, crosses, whole hearts, glowing with a soft, golden light. "In St. Mary Mead," she said softly, "the greatest revelations came in familiar places, a church, a garden, a hearth. This Pooh Corner, Mr. Pooh, it's the Woods' final stage, where its game will be played out. We must be ready for what we find." Her village wisdom saw the grass as a beacon, but also a trap, a place where truths and lies would collide. Poirot's cane paused, his gaze fixed on a new symbol etched into a tree, a heart, whole but pierced by a claw. "Madame, you are correct," he said, his voice sharp but strained. "This is no mere gathering place, it is a crucible, where the Woods' intent will be revealed. The letters, the transformations, the heart of the wood, they all lead here." "But Christopher Robin," his voice faltered, the question unspoken. Was he victim or mastermind? "Hercule Poirot will uncover the truth no matter how dark." The path opened into a clearing, and there stood Pooh Corner, or a twisted shadow of it. The familiar grassy knoll was scarred with black sap, its trees bent into unnatural shapes, their branches heavy with honeypots, straw bundles, and teacups, all dripping with the Woods' corrupted liquid. In the center was a circle of stones glowing with that sickly green light, and within it sat Christopher Robin, or what wore his form. His face was pale, his eyes closed, his hands folded over a book, its pages stained with sap. Around him stood the shadows of Piglet, Owl, Rabbit, Eeyore, and Tigger, their ember eyes blazing, their forms flickering between friend and monster. Pooh's tears fell, his voice breaking. "Christopher Robin," he cried, stepping forward, but Miss Marple grabbed his paw. "Wait, Mr. Pooh," she said, her voice calm but urgent. "Look at the circle. It's a ritual, like the altars in my village. He's not alone." Her eyes scanned the clearing, noting the grass forming a spiral around the stones, the symbols pulsing in time with the straw doll's stones. Poirot's eyes gleamed with determination. "This is the gathering," he said, his cane raised like a weapon. "The wood has brought us here with all its players, but Hercule Poirot sees the disguise. You." He pointed at Christopher Robin. "You are the key. Speak, or I shall unravel you." The figure's eyes opened, glowing with ember-like fire, and a smile spread across its face, too wide, too sharp. "You've come," it said, its voice, a chorus of all their friends layered with the Woods' laughter. "The gathering is complete. Heart, mind, soul, Pooh, Poirot, Marple, the wood thanks you." The stones flared and the shadows lunged, their claws tearing at the air. Miss Marple held her cross aloft, its silver light flaring, and the shadows recoiled. "You need us to choose," she said, her voice commanding. "In my village, the darkest hearts hid behind kindness. You're not Christopher Robin, you're the Woods' heart wearing his face." Her wisdom cut through the deception, seeing the ritual for what it was, a trap to break them. Pooh clutched the straw doll, its light joining the cross, and he stepped into the circle, his heart pounding. "I won't let you take him," Ain cried, his voice fierce despite his fear. He threw the doll into the stones and the light exploded, burning the sap, shattering the teacups and scattering the straw. The shadows screamed, their forms dissolving, but the figure laughed, its form stretching into something ancient, eyeless, and hungry. Poirot swung his cane, striking the book, and it fell open, revealing pages filled with symbols, spirals, crosses, hearts, and names. Pooh, Piglet, Owl, Rabbit, Eeyore, Tigger, Poirot, Marple. "The letters!" Poirot shouted. "They were written here by this thing." The figure roared and the wood shook, the fog surging like a tidal wave. The trio fought. Pooh's loyalty, Poirot's logic, and Marple's wisdom united against the wood's heart. The circle broke, the figure faltered, and a path opened, leading to a final light, the true heart of the wood. The gathering at Pooh Corner had unraveled the disguise, but the battle was far from over. Chapter 12. The final revelation. The fog in the 100-acre wood surged like a living tide, its icy tendrils clawing at Winnie the Pooh, Hercule Poirot, and Miss Jane Marple as they fled the shattered circle at Pooh Corner, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Pooh clutched the straw doll, its glowing stones now dim, a fragile reminder of Piglet's sacrifice and the fleeting hope that had carried them through the wood's nightmares. His fur was matted with black sap, his paws raw, his round eyes burning with tears for his lost friends, Piglet, Owl, Rabbit, Eeyore, Tigger, and the corrupted form of Christopher Robin, whose ember-eyed gaze had revealed the wood's heart. Poirot's cane struck the earth with desperate rhythm, his torn coat flapping, his mustache quivering as his little gray cells raced to grasp the truth unveiled in the book of symbols. The letters, the ritual, the names that bound them to the wood's hunger. Miss Marple's steps were steady, her shawl drawn tight, her sharp eyes piercing the fog, her silver cross glinting as she wove together the final threads of the mystery. The shadows' laughter roared, a guttural chorus that shook the trees, their ember-eyed forms surging closer, their claws tearing at the air as the wood fought to reclaim its prey. The air was thick with the stench of rot, blood, and the faint, fading sweetness of honey, but a new sensation pulsed through the fog, a warmth, faint but growing like the first light of dawn. Pooh's nose twitched, his heart stirring with a memory of the wood before its corruption, of Christopher Robin's voice calling him to play. It's close," he whispered, his voice trembling with hope and fear. "The real Christopher Robin, he's still here, isn't he?" The straw doll's stones flared briefly, as if answering, guiding them toward a final glowing light in the distance. Miss Marple's lips pursed, her eyes narrowing as she studied the path. The ground was scattered with fragments, honey pot shards, straw wisps, tea leaves, moss, forming a trail of glowing symbols, spirals, crosses, whole hearts, no longer broken. "In St. Mary Mead," she said softly, "the truth was always buried beneath layers of deceit revealed only when the heart was ready to see it. This path, Mr. Pooh, leads to the wood's core, where its secret lies. But the truth may be heavier than we expect." Her village wisdom saw the symbols as a confession, a map to the end, but also a warning of sacrifice. Poirot's cane paused, his gaze fixed on a final symbol etched into the ground, a heart encircled by a spiral, glowing with golden light. "Madame, you speak of truth, and Hercule Poirot agrees," he said, his voice sharp but strained. "The wood's game is nearly done. The letters, the transformations, the ritual, they all point to this moment. Christopher Robin, he is the key, but whether victim or architect, we shall see." His little gray cells burned with the need for resolution, the puzzle's pieces, honey, straw, tea, faith falling into place. Yet one question remained. Who had summoned them, and why? The path led to a clearing unlike any they'd seen, a perfect circle of golden grass untouched by sap, bathed in a warm, radiant light. In its center stood a single tree, not gnarled or corrupted but young and vibrant, its branches heavy with golden honey pots, straw bundles, and teacups all glowing with purity. Beneath it sat Christopher Robin, not the monstrous figure of Pooh Corner, but a boy, pale and trembling, his eyes clear but filled with sorrow. Around him knelt the forms of Piglet, Owl, Rabbit, Eeyore, and Tigger, their fur restored, their eyes untainted, but their bodies translucent as if caught between worlds. Pooh's tears fell, his voice breaking. "Christopher Robin," he cried, rushing forward, but Miss Marple's hand stopped him. "Wait, Mr. Pooh," she said, her voice calm but urgent. "Look at them. They're not fully here." Her eyes scanned the clearing, noting the light pulsing in time with the straw dolls, stones, the symbols forming a protective circle around the tree. Christopher Robin raised his head, his voice soft but heavy. "Pooh, you came? I'm sorry. So sorry." His hands clutched a book, the same one from Pooh Corner, its pages now glowing with golden script. "I didn't mean for this. I only wanted to keep you safe." Poirot stepped forward, his cane raised. "Monsieur, you will explain," he demanded. "The letters, the wood's hunger, the transformations, what have you done?" His voice was steel, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of pity, sensing the boy's torment. Christopher Robin's tears fell, his voice trembling. "The wood. It's alive. It always was. I found it long ago in stories, in dreams. It promised to protect you all, Pooh, Piglet, everyone, if I gave it something, a piece of me." He gestured to the book, its pages filled with their names. But it wanted more. It took my heart, my stories, and it grew. Hungry. Miss Marple's eyes gleamed with understanding. "In my village," she said, "sacrifices were made out of love, but love can blind. You fed the wood, Christopher Robin, and it twisted your gift into a trap. The letters, you sent them, didn't you? To bring us here, to stop it." "Christopher." Robin nodded, his voice breaking. "I couldn't fight it alone. The wood used me, wore my face, took my friends, but you—" He looked at Pooh, Poirot, Marple. "You're stronger. Your heart, your mind, your soul. You can end it." The fog surged and the shadows materialized, their ember eyes blazing, their forms towering. No longer bound by the wood's disguises, the true heart of the wood emerged, a writhing mass of sap, claws, and eyes, its voice a scream of hunger. "You cannot end me," it roared. "I am the wood, the stories, the dreams. Surrender, and live forever." Pooh clutched the straw, dull, its light flaring, joined by the glow of his honey pot shard. "I won't let you take them," he cried, his voice fierce. He stepped into the circle, the light burning the shadows, and his friends' forms glowed brighter, their voices joining his. Piglet's squeak, Owl's rasp, Rabbit's scold, Eeyore's moan, Tigger's bounce. Miss Marple held her cross aloft, its silver light merging with the golden glow. "You feed on surrender," she said, "but we choose to fight. In St. Mary Mead, the darkest hearts fell when faced with truth." Her wisdom fueled the light, the symbols flaring, the circle tightening. Poirot struck the book with his cane, its pages burning with golden fire. "Hercule Poirot sees the truth," he shouted. "You are no god, no dream. You are a parasite, and we shall starve you." His logic cut through the wood's lies, the light searing the sap. The wood screamed, its form collapsing, the fog dissolving, the shadows fading. Christopher Robin stood, his book crumbling, his form fading with his friends. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice a final gift. "You're free now." The clearing glowed, the tree blooming with new life, the wood reborn without its hunger. Pooh, Poirot, and Marple stood alone, the fog gone, the laughter silenced. The mystery was solved, the wood's heart destroyed, but the cost was heavy. Their friends, their innocence, gone forever. Pooh's tears fell, but he smiled, clutching the straw doll. "We did it," he said, his voice small but warm. "For them." Miss Marple nodded, her eyes soft. "In my village, endings were never easy, but they were true." Poirot adjusted his torn coat, his mustache twitching. "The truth, it is always enough. They walked away, the wood quiet, its secrets laid bare. The final revelation had freed them, but the 100-acre wood would never be the same.